With the announcement of the new Highlander reboot on the horizon, I wanted to analyze the live-action and animated media canon in order to calculate the most probable continuation of events. I am not the creator or owner of the franchise, so I don't have the authority to say what is and what is not canon. This is not a fan fiction channel. I will not create any characters, events, settings, or acts of God to determine the most logical outcome. I am limited to what we have seen on screen. To this end, there have been 5 live-action movies, 2 live-action television series, an animated television series, and 1 full-length anime. Since all this media exists in the motion picture canon, we start here. First, we must address the contradictions and discover the through line that underpins the entire series. Once this is accomplished, we can predict the causal trajectory, the most likely set of outcomes for the characters and even the setting to a certain extent. So let's see if we can't reconcile the events that seemingly nullify those that came before or afterwards, and yet simultaneously all exist, all be true, and endure. More simply put, the presupposition of this video is that every event happened and every character existed from every film and TV show, and they all share a single universe and timeline. Let's begin. The first problem is Connor. The original film places the story events in 1986 New York. The story concludes with Connor winning the game and receiving the prize for being the last living immortal. The tagline for the film being, "There can be only one." The second film was released in 1991, although the events of the film are set in 2024 with flashbacks to 1999. The film shows us Connor as an old man on the edge of a mortal death. New immortal assassins come from the planet Zeist to kill Connor. The reintroduction of immortals begins a change in old man Connor, reawakening his immortality. The first assassin loses his head, and Connor gets the quickening, which makes him young again. By the end of the second film, Connor has killed all the new immortals and received the prize again. The 1992 live-action TV series introduces us to Duncan MacLeod. The pilot episode shows us a meeting between Connor and Duncan. The 6 years that follow show Duncan face off against many immortals, so during this point in time, the prize has not been claimed. In 1994, Cain, the antagonist of the third film, escapes from a cave after 400 years. He tracks down Connor and informs him that the prize was never his. As expected, Connor beheads Cain and wins the prize for a third time on screen, but for the first time, and only time, due to the ham-fisted retcon of the narrative. In the 2000 film Highlander Endgame, Connor is beheaded by Duncan near the finale. In the 1994 animated TV series, we are introduced to Quentin MacLeod, the new Highlander. The events of the cartoon take place 700 years after the first film. The appearance of other immortals in 1986 suggests that Connor did not win the prize, and in a flashback, Connor is defeated by Cortan in 1986. While it's implied that Connor was beheaded, we are not shown this on screen. Let's do a quick recap chronologically. In 1986, Connor won the prize by killing the Kurgan, and at the same time did not win the prize at all, and was possibly killed by Cortan. In 1992, Connor is still alive, he did not win the prize, plus Duncan and many other immortals still live. In 1994, Connor wins the prize by killing Cain, but also did not win the prize because Duncan and the others still have their heads. In 1999, Connor was mortal after winning the prize in 1986. In 2000, Connor was killed by Duncan. In 2024, Connor won the prize a second time after killing General Katana. So, we must account for Connor winning the prize 3 times and also not winning it at any point and also being killed twice. If we allow for a chronology shuffle, then the narrative sequence could place Highlander 1 and 2 as the conclusion of all the media canon, except that, oh yeah, he was killed twice. The second problem is Highlander 2. In the first film, Ramirez was beheaded by the Kurgan, and yet he's able to return in the second film. The story takes place in 2024, continuing the events of the first film. Because of pollution, the ozone layer has failed, and everyone is dying from solar radiation. Connor, having claimed the prize, has vast knowledge and intelligence, so he develops the World Shield to take the place of the failing ozone layer. Fast forward many decades, and Connor is mortal, old, and dying. The world is a dark and dreary place, and many people blame Connor. Immortal assassins are sent to kill Connor, but luck is on his side as one assassin falls under a train and is decapitated. Connor is nearby, so the released quickening affects him, making him young once more. Now he engages the second assassin with a sword, but ends up beheading him using a cable. During the second quickening, Connor summons Ramirez by calling his name. Ramirez materializes in Scotland, fully clothed as an immortal, head firmly attached. Toward the end of the film, Ramirez expends all his life energy to reverse a death trap in order to save Connor and Connor's love interest Louise. Ramirez dies from the outpouring of power and disappears. This film has been recut several times. There's a version where immortals come from the planet Zeist. Another version says immortals come from the distant past, and as punishment are exiled into our historical past, technically into the future from the immortals' perspective. Now there are both a prehistory and extraterrestrial origin for immortals, not to mention, at the very least, legitimate magic and exotic technology, seen in the hoverboard and wingsuits used by the assassins, as well as space travel and time travel. The second film gives us two immortal origin stories, Ramirez back from the dead, a depleted ozone layer, and a world shield in 1999 that is gone 1 year later in the year 2000. It still remains gone in the movie The Source, which events occurred during 2007, and then mysteriously back again in 2024. What a mess. The third problem. Magic. In the third film, magic plays a very central role in the narrative. The main villain, Cain, acquires illusion magic after killing another immortal named Nakano. Cain uses illusion to torment Connor and those close to him. When Connor takes his head, we never see him use this magic again. Magic is noticeably absent in Endgame, although the trailers show Jacob Kell, the villain, using many different mystical abilities. The live-action TV show, Highlander the series, and Highlander the Raven both present a grounded and realistic setting, where only the quickenings produce any visual evidence of magic. The writing focuses on character development, the interactions and relationships the immortals have with each other, and the regular mortals around them. The purposeful mundane works to redefine the magic as being hidden and sacred. Immortals are mysterious, prescient, and ageless, living silently, unnoticed by wider society, dueling in secret. A warrior fraternity from an age long forgotten, blessed and burdened with childless eternal life, always with the threat of combat and death waiting in the shadows. The anime does not add any expansion to the magical abilities of its two immortals, but it does suggest a form of reincarnation. Colin MacLeod loses his love only to find a woman remarkably like her thousands of years in the future. Connor also has this same situation in the third film, when he meets a woman named Sarah in the 18th century, only to meet her exact doppelganger in the 1990s named Alex. 700 years into the future, immortals can pass the quickening on without being beheaded. This theme is reused from the second film, where the quickening can be expelled at will, as demonstrated by Ramirez and Connor. There seems to be a divide in the fandom between the Connorverse and the Duncanverse. I've never heard anyone else use these terms, but in regards to the parallel timelines, I think the verses' monikers make for a clear distinction. The Duncanverse is grounded in reality, whereas the Connorverse is fantastical. I think Endgame brought these two universes into conflict, and that's why we were teased with a fantasy trailer, but what we actually got was an action drama. I personally think that the trailer for Endgame tried to portray the villain Jacob Kell similarly to the Warlock 3 villain, as both were played by the same actor, Bruce Payne, and they wanted to recapture that feeling of power and malevolence. In the end, the grounded tone was chosen and continued into the 2007 movie, The Source. Okay, after all of that, what is the through line for the entire series? When Christopher Lambert was asked about the first Highlander movie, he maintained that it was a love story that explained the heartache of outliving everyone you care about. In every film and show, with the exception of the cartoon, the titular MacLeod has a love interest. These MacLeods are characterized as romantic swordsmen that are both lovers and fighters, while sadly their villains are archetypally one-dimensional, always depicted as chaotic, violent, and domineering. The past is always shown as idealized, while the future is dystopian and catastrophic, inevitable and unchangeable. Another departure from the established lore was introduced by the cartoon, immortals that didn't want to kill anymore. Endgame used this idea for the Sanctuary, where Connor would go into self-imposed exile, aided by the Watchers. Can we make a pie out of all these breadcrumbs? If we maintain that all these experiences did happen in a single shared world, how can they all be true? Endgame is key to everything. The Watchers abduct Duncan and attempt to drag him into the Sanctuary. During this lucid state, we see him having vivid memories. After taking Connor's head, Duncan channels his voice and likeness. Then later, he takes Jacob's quickening. Duncan remains alive at the end of The Source, and he and Anna conceive a child in the planetary alignment. Other than immortal fertility, we have no idea what other effects The Source might have on Duncan. The only logical conclusion is that all the events that we have seen on screen take place in Duncan's mind. Characters, like General Katana and Kane, did exist, but their fantastic or inconsistent events are figments of Duncan's breaking mind. The live-action series gave us a Duncan that fell to a dark quickening, and his evil side emerged for a time. Now, with the added 666 souls Duncan absorbed after killing Jacob Kell, there would be a justifiable mental and psychological dissonance within his mind. The events of The Source can either be in play or be a bad dream. That is for the creators to decide, and there may be a good reason to suggest this very thing. The anime and cartoon events could still be future canon, meaning that depending on when the next entry happens, Colin, Marcus, Don Ramirez, and Cortan are alive and operating in the world somewhere. Based on the evidence, this is the only logical narrative direction to take with the Duncan character. We are never told how many heads Mythos has taken, only that he's been alive for 5,000 years. We have been shown and told of Duncan's many victories, and I think it is fair to assume that he is carrying the most quickened souls of any immortal in the canon. Endgame showed that Connor can rise to the surface of Duncan's consciousness in moments of high stress, so there is no reason to reject that other personalities could do the same, even altering Duncan's voice and appearance. This would present a massive identity crisis for Duncan. A few narrative paths suggest themselves here, but only the creators can decide those stories. The prediction of my causal trajectory for the Highlander series is this. Everything seen on screen is shown to us from Duncan's memories. The events that don't seem to make sense are caused by the overlapping experiences and self-delusion of the many souls that now share Duncan's mind. The absurd rememberings are a byproduct of Duncan's subconscious, trying to bring order to all the chaos. Faced with the grim reality of his own broken mind and frightened of being taken over by an evil personality, Duncan decides that he must end his own life, away from other immortals, so that his quickening is not passed on. Should the creators decide on this route, there is a wealth of character potential, especially for Adrian Paul as an actor. There is, of course, an opportunity to explore schizophrenia, but also opportunities for characters to interact that previously couldn't. If the source is living canon rather than memory canon, then perhaps Duncan's child could help him die samurai style, provided that the child is born as a mortal. Otherwise, if by some means Joe Dawson is somehow still alive, then if he's the one who helps ease Duncan's passing into the great beyond, I assure you there would not be a dry eye in the house. Or Mythos may decide that now is the time to take the head of an unhinged Duncan. After all, his mind is far older and wiser, certainly capable of crushing the rumblings of a few restless souls. I think Mythos would be convinced that this is the course of action that he must take. This battle must happen, even if it's on holy ground. All consequences be damned. However, these final thoughts of mine are more speculative rather than predictive, so I'll leave it at that for now. And thus ends the storied and noble life of Duncan MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod, a man of conviction and sacrifice, choosing to die a hero, winning the victory over darkness, it never to consume him again. Until next time.